Francesca is, their pronouns are she, they, and they are the head of curriculum here at Coven. Cheska is an award-winning designer and educator whose work encompasses digital, tabletop, and alternative controller-style projects. She holds an MFA in game design from New York University and is the president of the Indigo studio called Contigo Games. I hope I said that correctly.
You did, yes.
Oh, yes, I got it right. And Cheska is an independent game designer working on a whole bundle of exciting upcoming projects. You may have heard of Cartomancy. Cheska is the project lead for that. If you haven't, I highly recommend going and checking it out. And Cheska loves plants and caffeinated tea and her dog, Olive. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Cheska.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I've got my screen share set up. I'm also going to flip on my camera so folks can actually see me. Hello. Yeah, so thanks so much, Lauren. I'm super excited to be here. Game jams are just like very, very dear to my heart. I think at this point I've probably done like upwards of, honestly, like maybe 30 game jams in my game development career. They've given me so many opportunities to just like try out new skills and learn new things, but also to like meet people and meet friends who I'm like still collaborating with, you know, to this day on larger projects, and many of whom I'm, you know, very, very close friends with still. So I just want to thank everyone again just for being here, being a part of, you know, this game jam, helping us kick off this awesome event. So for today, I'm going to be talking through some strategies and guidelines for brainstorming and collaboration. As mentioned, like my favorite thing about game jams is just meeting and working with different people who have different skill sets than I do, and both learning from them and also sharing the knowledge that I have. And I think it's just like a great place to experiment, try new things, and yeah, just wanted to walk through some of the things that I have done for like leading brainstorming or establishing boundaries and expectations in asynchronous teams. Also just going to make sure I have the text chat open so I can answer questions. If you do have any, you can pop them into the text chat. Awesome. So jumping right into it, let's talk a little bit about asynchronous work. So this is, you know, an online jam. We're going to be collaborating remotely across time zones. And it's really important that we are setting expectations for our team, for ourselves, and also creating boundaries. I think when we use the word boundary, it's often taken in like a negative connotation. But honestly, boundaries are a way to show respect for ourselves and for others. So when we know what the boundaries are, we can establish accurate expectations. You know, we know what we are able to give, we know what we are able to ask from other people. So this is just a form of respect, a form of accountability, and we shouldn't feel bad about establishing boundaries with our teams, but also with ourselves, right? For working habits, working hours. This is something I continuously struggle with. It's always a learning process of figuring out how to set my own boundaries. So yeah, definitely something to be thinking about as we go into our teams and we're starting to think about how do we want to work on this project? How do we want to work together? So this is a really great place to start. And when we're thinking about boundaries, I think the number one thing, especially in a game jam that has very limited time constraints, we're talking a lot about availability, right? Like what hours are we available to work? When do we like to work? When do we not want to work? And understanding also that everyone, you know, on our team is going to have different things that they need to be doing outside of the jam during the week. They're going to have different amounts of availability. We're also going to be working across time zones, so we might need to find some overlap hours to actually sync up and, you know, co-work if that's something we want to do. And also, you know, external work schedules, family responsibilities, rest time is very important. So making sure that we're factoring in all of these things when we're figuring out availability for our teams. And when we talk about like scripts that we can use to establish boundaries and communicate availability, I really encourage you to use some of these phrases. Like these are ones that I use all the time. all communication is a negotiation. We want to be making sure that, if we need to decline something, we're offering up an alternative that will hopefully work better for both of us. So trying to figure out a happy medium for all of the parties. So saying things like, I'm unavailable at that time, can we reschedule? Or I'm free starting at X time, which offers a solution or something, that is possible for me that I hope will work for you as well. I have other responsibilities, so I won't be online until X time. Are you available then? So really try to offer alternatives. I think this is great not only when establishing availability, but also when you're collaborating and sharing ideas, right? We always want to kind of try to find a negotiation so everyone is feeling fulfilled and happy and heard. So moving forward, this is something that I've done when I have run asynchronous game jams. I find that this is a really great way just to get people on the same page, but I even just do this with myself when I'm starting a project. So thinking about, what are the things that I'm actually interested in working on during this time? What are the disciplines that I actively want to be doing? Or learning, also thinking about what is the skill that I want to practice? What is a new thing that I want to learn? Thinking about general availability as well, of course, thinking about, what other responsibilities do I have coming up this week? Am I going to feel overburdened? Let me communicate that with my team so we have accurate expectations. So I really encourage you when you're jumping into your teams, you're kicking off your jam, or even if you're working by yourself on a project, thinking about these things and taking a moment to consider them. So we're going to do a quick activity in the chat. So here are the questions that I would like you to ask yourself. Oops, excuse me. My PowerPoint is all over the place. So thinking about, let's jot these down just for ourselves, but there is one that I would like you to share in the chat. So thinking about, I'm interested in working on something that is ... Do you have a certain genre you're feeling excited about? Do you have certain topics or content you really want to explore? Thinking also about, these are the disciplines that I want to do. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, the one that you are most skilled at. What is the one that you want to practice during this time? And the one that I would love everyone to take a moment and share in chat is, one new skill that I want to learn is ... So this can be as specific or as general as you would like. This could be something, as general as I would like to make a 3D model. I want to make one 3D model for this game. Or it can be something, really specific of I want to create a character that represents this demographic or, reflects this certain demographic that I'm a part of. And let's, I'll read out some of them. So, how to write for games. That's a really, really great one. Taking some time to learn about, interactive narrative and narrative design. That's really awesome. New skill I want to learn, how to best convey empathy for Avatar. That's really, really awesome. I'm extremely into that. I think emotions in games is something I'm really interested in exploring, and especially with game jams where you have a smaller amount of time, a smaller amount of content, right? What are ways that we can really tap into how a player is feeling and how they might, connect with certain characters, right? Another writing for games. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And then Lauren says, one new skill I would like to learn is how to communicate with so many teams without burning out. Yes, Lauren, please rest. We appreciate you so much, but make sure you take a nap. Write with intersectional inclusion in mind. That's fantastic. That's a really great goal and something you can definitely practice. How narratives are technically implemented in games. Lots of narrative ones. I feel like maybe we should give some resources on narrative design and things. If anyone wants book recommendations, I love narrative design books. Hold on, my stream is in the way of all of them. I'm getting an idea of how the sausage is made, but for the game design process, I think honestly, it's always really important. Even if you see that as being a very basic thing, every team is going to have a different process, and it's something that is really important to explore and revisit the basics and adapt them to our team. So I think that's a really awesome one. how to convey moods and emotions via narrative design. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. Also, depending on like the format of your game, the genre of your game, like how you're depicting these things, whether it's text only or you're accommodating, accentuating with like visuals or audio as well. That's awesome. Better communication with the team. Yeah, I love that. I think that's also something we're, always improving and always learning. So that's great. Yeah, conveying the narrative through mechanics and environment. That's also a really great one to experiment with during jams, where you usually, right, have a few very small scoped mechanics and really thinking about like, how can I make my narrative really like embrace and highlight the actual verbs and actions the player is doing in the game. It's a great place to practice that as well. Okay, book recommendations. I will absolutely do this. And let's see, pacing myself and learning to take care of myself and be productive. Yes, rest is productive. Rest is a part of the creative process. I really encourage you, we're talking about brainstorming today, so especially during brainstorming, but in general throughout the jam, make sure that you are engaging in other like hobbies and activities and things that bring you joy, and bring that back into your game creation process. That's going to make sure that you're feeling inspired and excited, and you're going to be bringing in external influence, which ultimately makes us better creatives, better storytellers. So I really recommend taking that time. So that's a great one. And then didn't come in wanting to learn any specific skills, but going to be learning how to do character art. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think, like doing character art, like flexing those skills is really great. I'm curious, are you interested also in kind of like character design and like concepting? I think that's something that is so much fun to do during jams. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing these, everyone. And I really encourage you to think about these things as you're brainstorming and figuring out what project you're going to work on. Thinking about like, what are the disciplines you want to do? What are the skills you want to practice? And like ultimately making sure that you're spending the time making something that is fulfilling for you. Awesome. I'm going to keep going. And also make sure I am keeping an eye on the time. Cool. So for when we talk about brainstorming, there's kind of these different steps that I usually work through with myself. So the first one is open brainstorming. So this is just quantity, just getting as many ideas out as possible. And we'll go through and we'll curate these later and actually see how feasible they are. They're just doing open brainstorming as much as possible, getting every idea that you have onto a piece of paper, written down, shared with your team. And after that, we can take all of these really cool things that we've thought about or things that we're interested in, and we can start grouping them into maybe categories or things that are similar. And once we've done this, we kind of have little like pockets of, concepts, little ideas that we're feeling excited about. We can start doing actual ideation of game ideas, right? Like game concepts, like how would this collection of words actually, manifest into a game and become an actual thing that we could play. And after we have a bunch of, actual little game concepts, little ideas, we go through this confirmation stage, right? Where we're actually talking with our team about, which one are we feeling most excited about? Which one are we feeling is most feasible for us, right? Thinking a lot about scope. So when we talk about scope, we're talking about the overall size of the project and how much time is going to need to go into making that a reality. So making sure that we are scoping very, very small for this shorter jam and development duration. And just really important, discussion at every single step, making sure that everyone on the team is having having space to contribute and to bring ideas to the table, and also express like what ideas other people are bringing that they're really excited about, right? Like, yeah, this is really in line with what I'm also excited about. I find that the most exciting, or I keep saying exciting, I'm just very excited, but the most exciting thing about brainstorming for me isn't even the idea itself. It's figuring out what other people are excited by, right? What are the things that my teammates are really into, and how can we find a project that is fulfilling for all of us? So this is also a great space just to get to know each other a little bit better. Cool. So when we talk about brainstorming, this is a tip that was given to me a long time ago and I still use all the time, using what is called the yes and strategy. So this actually comes from improv theater. The idea is that you're building off of everyone else's contributions. So you're not dismissing, you're not diverting, you're not overriding with your own ideas. The goal is just to keep building and think of as many ideas as possible, get them all written down. So as an example, like someone contributes, what if we made a game about a witch? And we say, yes, and maybe it's a mystery game about a lost legend. And we keep building off of this with more and more ideas we're feeling excited about. So use this strategy to make sure everyone feels heard, make sure that we're getting all of these ideas down, and we're building instead of dismissing or diverting. So another thing about brainstorming, it's really important that you let your ideas be entirely separate of yourself. Try not to take ownership. The goal is really not to get like your idea chosen. The goal is to find an idea that is a combination of everyone's contributions that we're all feeling really excited about. So once you've shared an idea with the team, try to separate yourself. It's no longer your idea. It belongs to this like collective mountain of different concepts that we're putting together. So don't take ownership. Try to just like let things be separate of you and keep this goal in mind. I wanted to give an example here of just some brainstorming like formatting that I've done also again for online jams that I've run with small groups. So this was, we set up like a spreadsheet. We had a theme that was lost and found. I think this was for the Wholesome Game Jam a while back. But what we did is we just had a big spreadsheet space where people could just jot down random words, random concepts, random ideas related to this theme. And then from here, we started grouping these into like, oh, I suggested like this thing. We realized a lot of people were putting like dinosaur related things, right? So we made a little category for like animals or ancient things, and we started categorizing these. And after we did that, that was where the ideation for actual game concepts emerged. I'm just gonna check my time. So I really recommend thinking about like, do we want to do verbal brainstorming? Do we all want to hop on a call and actually talk through things? Would we rather just spend some time all jotting down ideas? Maybe that's more comfortable for us. Okay, so we've got our big brainstorming, we've done all of our things. Then we're going to start talking about, ideation. We're going to talk a little bit about like, what are the actual game concepts that are within all of this brainstorming? What are we feeling excited about? What might be really challenging? So this is a good jumping off point for conversations about mechanic, about scope of your project. This is where we can start saying things like, I really love that idea. I'm a little worried about having to program an extra character though. In this situation, maybe we've proposed that it's a 2-player game, right? But also communicating if you have a specific thing that you want to try for this project and saying, I would really love to try creating some 3D objects for a game. Is that something that we can work into this idea? Would we want to adjust this idea a little bit so that, that can fit in and we can practice those skills? So definitely start thinking a little bit more about the logistics and kind of like how things are actually going to be built here. Oh, my PowerPoint is having such a time. So we're grouping things, we're shortening our brainstorming list, really identifying the things we're feeling excited about. We don't have to make a ton of actual decisions yet, but I think this is a great space to just start figuring out like, what are people excited about? Which idea is most feasible for us in terms of scope and like existing skill sets as well. And the last step here is that confirmation step. So we have these different ideas of games that we want to be building and that we're feeling excited about. These are some questions to ask, right? Which is most exciting to us? Which is the best use of our skill sets and interests? Which idea is actually going to let us practice skills we're interested in developing? And again, that reasonable scope for the duration of the jam. So these are just questions to be revisiting at every step of just like confirming an idea. And also actually as you're continuing to work on your project throughout the jam, checking in with your team and making sure that these things are, still being addressed and still being talked about. Especially for scope, that's really important that you're revisiting that throughout the jam. Being really honest with each other of if something's taking you a lot longer than expected, or maybe you're just having a lot of fun working on this one specific thing, revisiting the scope and making sure that you're adjusting as you go. So when we talk about production, we're talking about the organization structures of how the project is being made. So this is an important thing to talk about, again, because we're working asynchronously, we're working remotely, thinking about what types of tools we want to be using to organize ourselves in our project, and also how we're communicating. Are we a team that likes to communicate through text mostly? Are we going to want to hop on a video call once in a while and really sync up on things? When and how should we be making decisions? Do we only make decisions when we're actually, on a call discussing things? Are we okay with our artist, making and handling those decisions related to visual design? Thinking about just how we want to handle these conversations so that we have a blueprint for our collaboration. Also, where do we brainstorm? Do you want to do it on a sheet like that? Would you prefer to do it maybe in like a Trello on cards? There's lots of different options. I think just thinking about how is your team going to feel most creative and feel most heard? So these are the things that I just keep circling back to. And then also, who's going to work on what elements? What's our plan for all of the pieces of the game that need to be built? Who's going to be handling those? And, how are they all going to come together? So just thinking about this different process of how we're going to organize ourselves. These are conversations that should happen at the beginning of the jam when you start working together. Again, just so you have like an established way that you're all going to be collaborating. My PowerPoint is so unhappy with me. There we go. So the last slide is just an intention slide. I really want to emphasize that it is okay to not be, best friends with the people that you're working with. I have a lot of longtime collaborators that we don't really hang out much outside of work, and that's totally okay. But when it comes to amplifying each other's ideas and supporting each other's skill sets, and really enabling each other to do really good work, these are the people that I go to immediately, right? But you should always be extending kindness and compassion. That is just an intention that we all should be carrying with us into this group work. Communicating with your team or with mentors if you're having worries or struggles. The larger Discord community as well, we're really happy to support you, whether it's technical things or if you're trying to figure out what are the best tools that we can be using to communicate. Anything that you're feeling that might be a point of tension or something you're trying to figure out and work through, communicate with your team, communicate with the resources that are here for you. Something that I think is also really important is feeling really excited about helping a teammate learn something new. There's a balance here, though, where we want to offer support and guidance, but also give people time to problem solve, right, and work through things on their own. So make sure that you're balancing that, you're providing space, but also support. And again, just coming always back to scope, because this is a small amount of time, should be a relatively small project. Revisit your plan for your game and adjust scope as you go. Be okay to cut things in favor of the stuff that you're feeling more excited about, or the stuff that you need to spend more time with. Don't be precious about ideas. Separate your ego from your contributions. The goal is not to make your game. The goal is to make your team's game and find something that is really fulfilling for everyone that you're all going to be really proud of and excited about, and want to share with the world after the jam. So I think that is my last slide. So these are just lots of things that I keep in mind on a day-to-day, both in game jams and also just working with teams and collaborating with people. So I think we have, Lauren, let me know, but I think we have another 5 minutes. So I'm really happy to take questions from the chat as well. Cool. Is that okay if I jump in and do that, Lauren? Oh no, I see Lauren unmuted, but I cannot hear you. It might be mic stuff. I'll go ahead and I'll grab a question. So best pro tip when you're new to this. Okay, cool. Thank you, Lauren. The number one thing is just communication. I think for all game dev, not just game jams, but when in doubt, communicate with your team. When you're feeling confident, communicate with your team. When you're feeling confused, communicate with your team. So just checking in as frequently as you can. In a way that feels productive and that feels supportive. You want to make sure you're giving people like heads down time to actually work on things, but make sure that you're keeping up that communication and people feel comfortable like getting feedback, sharing work in progress. The earlier that we're running things by each other and discussing things, the easier it's going to be if we do want to pivot or try something different. So I would definitely say just number one for every game dev everything is communication for me. And also Calamity says have fun. That's the other like really big pro tip is just, I know small time frames for game jams can be really stressful. Make sure you're resting, make sure that you're enjoying what you're making and the people you're working with, and just like have a good time. So yeah. Did anyone else have any other questions about brainstorming, collaboration, game jams in general before we wrap up? I'm gonna ask the hard question. Okay, Lauren. Bring it. What is the hard question? Let's see. Yeah, we have time for maybe a couple more. If anyone else does want to jump in, please feel welcome to pop things into the text chat. Yeah, if you're having a negative experience due to XYZ, how can you communicate this kindly? I think that's such a good question. I think there is a lot of, it really depends on the thing, of course, but I think like it is always kindest to communicate things as early as possible and, without shame as well. I think we tend to feel a lot of shame, right? If we've committed to something, I said, hey, I'm gonna make this art asset, I'll finish it by tomorrow. But maybe something comes up in my personal life, maybe I'm just feeling really tired, I'm working a little bit more slowly that day. Communicating that as early as possible so that my team knows and expects that things are shifting. I know it can, you can feel, embarrassed maybe that you're not able to get something done, but ultimately that's going to make collaborating and moving forward and finishing your project way easier overall. And also if someone communicates that they're, struggling with something, making sure that you are not creating, guilt or urgency, making sure that you're allowing them to express that, right, without feeling bad about it. Ultimately, if people feel comfortable communicating struggles that they're having, that enables the team to jump in and support them. So I think that's just a really, really important thing to be doing. Yeah. How can you get everyone together to communicate effectively when your group is big? Yeah, I think that I would definitely recommend thinking about, are we doing written communication primarily? Are we doing voice communication? If you have a really big group, I would really recommend having someone take kind of ownership or point over the structure of meetings or of how we are documenting information. I think writing things down is really important when you have a big group. Any decisions that you're making, any like task assignments that you're doing with your team, write them down. Because very, very often you'll have a conversation, people will interpret things a little bit slightly differently and then go off their separate ways, not realizing that we have a different picture in our head of what we're doing. So making sure you're documenting things, have someone really take point on, organizing that and checking in with people. Yeah, big groups are complicated but fun. It's a great way just to like learn from people as well. What's my favorite game jam memory? That's a really good question. That is a very good question. I think my favorite game jam memories, I have to give a big shout out to Train Jam, which is, I think, probably my favorite game jam I've ever done. Train Jam is a game jam that takes place on a train over the course of 3 days as you travel from Chicago to San Francisco just prior to the Game Developers Conference. And I think my favorite thing about that jam is that for the most of it, you are outside of cell signal service, you actually don't have internet. And though this can be really frustrating when you come across a problem, it means that the people on the train really band together to troubleshoot and help each other. People will just walk up and down the train being like, I have an issue with my shader. Can someone help me, please? And people are really generous with their time, and it's a really great way just to connect, right, of offering that support to people. Yes, it is literally on a train. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. But it creates this like sense of community, which I really appreciate. So awesome. I see.
Working?
Yes. Hello.
Hello. All right.
Hi.
Okay. Let's answer that final question. It's nothing just
my last
before I
one.
got to talk.
Yeah, I think I used to really prefer IRL game jams. I think more recently, now that I'm finding, ways that feel good for me to communicate and collaborate remotely, I actually don't have a strong preference. I'm definitely someone who I like to co-work during jams, so I more recently for remote jams that I've done, we've set up like a Discord call or just a hangout where people will hop on and share their screens and just kind of co-work and like jam to the same music. I think for me it's just about feeling connected to people. So I don't enjoy remote jams when I'm feeling like I'm just over here working on my own thing. As long as I'm finding ways to feel connected and involved with my team, then I feel very like fulfilled. So. Yeah. Thanks so much for all these awesome questions, everyone.
Thank you, Cheska, for your time and your expertise and being with us here today. I'm going to say that's a wrap, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I will leave the text chat open, so if anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them up in the text chat, and I will pass them on to Cheska.
Awesome, thank you.
And can we get claps in chat for Cheska, please?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm gonna pop some hearts into the chat. Yeah, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me and being a part of this awesome game jam. Again, I hope you have a fantastic time. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the Discord and to the community if you need support or need any help. I'm so excited to see what you make.